Boker Tov, good morning, Rabotai. Continuing on the halachot of Tishea Beav, of the 9 days, I want to speak a little bit about who is obligated and who is exempt in the fast of Tishea Beav. So the Shulchan Aruch says in Siman Tav Kuf Nun Dalid, Seif Vav, a chaya, which is a woman who just gave birth, all 30 days, kol shloshim yom, v'chen, so too, chole shehu tzarich lechol, a sick person that needs to eat, en tzarich lo omed. We don't have to start calculating how much. Ela ma'achilin oto miyad, dimakom choli lo gazru rabbanan. And in a case of sickness, Chachamim weren't gozer, which means, to be very clear, Tishea Beav, although it's the stringent out of all the 4 fasts, nevertheless, since it's a rabbinic fast, Chachamim said in a case of sickness, lo gazru rabbanan. Regarding Yom Kippur, it's slightly different. By Yom Kippur, somebody who's sick, it's not they weren't gozer on the fast, it's the oraita. Rather, in a case of pikuach nefesh, she could eat. By Tishea Beav, the Shulchan Aruch is of the opinion that if somebody is a chole, he's a sick person, he would be able to eat, and he doesn't even have to be careful how much he should eat. Now, where does this extend to? I'll give you a few examples practically. Number one, we have a question in the poskim that we spoke about in the past, whether a chole, whether a chole has to eat. When he eats, does he eat little by little, pachod mika shi'ur, which would be less than 30 milliliters or less than an ounce every 4 or preferably every 9 minutes, like Yom Kippur, or can he eat regularly? So once we said that choli lo gazru bo rabbanan, that means he can eat regularly, unless it's a type of chole that he's preventing himself from getting worse. For example, I'll give you a few examples. A woman who's afraid she's not going to have any more milk to give to her baby, and her baby doesn't take formula. So in that type of case, we would allow her to have pachot. She's not sick, but on the other hand, she needs to eat or drink. So then, pachot mika shi'ur, we would be able to give her to drink. So too, somebody who is weak to a point that if they like a pregnant woman, that she is afraid lo aleinu, that if she doesn't eat or drink, she's going to get to dehydration. Or a woman in her 9th month, she's afraid that if she's going to go into labor, she's not going to have any strength. That also might be a sakana. So then in that case, she's not sick yet. In that case, she's not sick. No, pregnant women have to fast on Tishea Beav. This year is going to be different. We spoke about a different halacha this year because it's a nidche. There's much more leniency for her to eat, as you could check in the previous halachot that we spoke about. But in regards to a woman on a regular year that's fasting, so if she's just doing it in order to avoid getting into a problem, then it would be preferable for her to have pachot machot b'kashiur. What would be the difference? In that case, a person who is eating less than a kashur, it's considered as if they are fasting. So therefore, in the Sefer Shoshanat Yisrael, page Ayin Tet, brings that they would have to say anenu in their tefillah, whereas a chole, a sick person, doesn't say anenu, like it's written in the Biur Halacha Siman Tav Kuf Samech Sif Aleph, that somebody who is exempt from a fast doesn't have to say anenu. So once again, somebody who is exempt from a fast means that he's a chole, but if somebody's not a chole, he's just doing preventative, they're not sick yet, then they wouldn't be obligated. They would say anenu, and it'd be considered like they are in somewhat fasting. I want to give a few more examples where a person has to be careful that they shouldn't fast. First of all, diabetic. It's messing up with their sugars and systems. A diabetic is patur from fasting. Even on Yom Kippur, at least diabetic type 1 for sure doesn't fast. And regarding type 2, that they should speak to their doctor. Many times also they don't fast. Somebody who's suffering lo alin from nervous breakdowns, if they're going to fast, that the Gemara in Masechet Shabbat Daf Chavtet Amud Bet says somebody who has a ruach ra'ah, somebody who has ruach ra'ah inside them, which means that they have something else possessing them sometimes, and it's really similar to a nervous breakdown. So you could do pikuach, that's called pikuach nefesh. So somebody who's lo aleinu, suffering from severe anxiety or nervous breakdowns, there would be patur. It could be even for Yom Kippur. Somebody who's elderly. Now, we mentioned in the past that Rabbi Shimon Bashol writes over 80 years old, but it really depends on case-by-case basis. But if they're weak and elderly, especially on Tishea Beav, they will be exempt from fasting. Somebody's obviously who's going through chemotherapy, somebody who's who just had a surgery. So all of these would be somebody that would be patur from fasting, and one should be aware not to be overly machmir, especially this year of Tishea Beav Shinitche. They should speak to their Rav and their doctor to make sure. Chazaku Baruch.